Some tragedies arrive without warning, moments that begin as ordinary and end in catastrophe. Horrible Fates explores real stories of people who met their end in shocking, unexpected ways. These are the final chapters they never saw coming, and that you won't forget. For decades, Malcolm Jamal Warner was best known as Theo Huxtable, America's teenage son from The Cosby Show. Charming, thoughtful, smart. To many, he was family, appearing in living rooms week after week. But in the summer of 2025, Warner's life came to a sudden, terrifying end. On a quiet, foreign beach in front of his own child. Warner had taken his daughter on a tropical getaway to Costa Rica, a father-daughter trip. He had recently spoken about needing rest, clarity, and connection. And what better place to find it than beneath swaying palms and endless sunshine? On July 20th, they arrived at Playa Hermosa, beautiful beach, a secluded stretch of coast famous for its views, and infamous among locals for something else. Rip currents, powerful ones, silent, deadly. But most tourists don't know that. The waves look calm from shore, the water warm and inviting. On that day, Warner and his daughter stepped into the shallows. She waded ahead, smiling. It was a moment any parent would hold close, until it became the stuff of nightmares. In seconds, the tide shifted. A force surged beneath the surface, and she was gone, dragged rapidly out to sea. Witnesses say Warner didn't hesitate. He ran into the water without a word. No panic, no second thoughts. Just a father trying to save his child. He swam against the current, an almost impossible task, and reached her. Somehow, he kept her head above water while fighting the undertow. That's when a surfer nearby, and alert, spotted them. The surfer paddled out, grabbed Warner's daughter, and pulled her to safety. She lived. She's alive today. But Warner was still in the water, and by the time help turned back to rescue him, he had vanished. They pulled his body from the sea minutes later. Still, lifeless. CPR was performed on the shore. His daughter, soaked and trembling, watched from a beach towel while strangers tried to bring her father back. They couldn't. The official cause was drowning due to asphyxiation. He had used the last of his energy not to save himself, but to hold her up. The beach that day was filled with tourists taking photos, building sandcastles, and sipping coconuts. By noon, it was cleared out. A rescue vehicle idled in the sand. A single white sheet fluttered in the wind, and a girl sat beside it, fatherless. Fans across the world saw the headlines. Many couldn't believe it. Not Malcolm, not Theo. But this wasn't a headline. It wasn't a scandal or a scripted ending. This was real. A man went on vacation to spend time with his daughter, and he never came home. At 6:03 a.m. in the southern Brazilian countryside, the sky was perfect, clear, pale, glowing. 21 tourists climbed into a wicker basket the size of a van. Most were strangers, some couples, some solo travelers, a few American honeymooners. One woman had just turned 60 and was checking something off her bucket list. They were there for the same reason, to see the sunrise from the sky. The hot air balloon lifted smoothly from a field in Santa Catarina, a scenic region known for its vineyards, mountains, and dreamlike views. Below, farmhouses shrank, trees became broccoli, birds floated beside them. Laughter and camera clicks filled the air. Everything felt magical until it wasn't. Roughly 15 minutes into the flight, at around 400 feet above ground, someone heard a strange hissing noise. Then came the smell. Burning plastic. The flames flared too wide, possibly due to a leak or a malfunction. Part of the balloon began to catch fire, and the passengers began to panic. The pilot tried to control it, and he shouted instructions: stay low, stay calm. But calm was no longer possible. The fire spread fast, melting through the balloon fabric. The basket, still in the air, began to tip, and then the balloon ripped. The silence of the sky was shattered by screaming. Witnesses on the ground reported seeing flames falling from the sky, trailing ash and black smoke. Some passengers tried to climb over the side to escape the heat. Others held onto each other, frozen in place. Then, at least 4 tourists started to jump from the basket. They fell 30 stories before hitting the ground. Others remained trapped as the basket plummeted in a slow, spiraling freefall, engulfed in flames. When rescue workers reached the crash site, the smell of fuel and scorched earth filled the air. Bodies were scattered. Charred wood and fabric marked the place where the balloon hit. 8 people died. Several others were severely burned. Of the survivors, some still live with permanent injuries. Some don't remember anything after the flame ignited. One survivor claimed to have smelled the fire before seeing it, but was unconscious before impact. The exact cause is still under investigation, though early reports suggest a propane leak or a faulty hose. The company that operated the balloon had passed all safety inspections. On paper, everything was fine, but in the sky, nothing was. What began as a dream quickly turned into a nightmare so intense it shattered multiple lives forever. They weren't skydiving or exploring treacherous caves. They believed they were safe, simply enjoying a beautiful hot air balloon ride. It's terrifying how one mistake, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, or just following your usual routine can end your life in an instant. Stay safe, because sometimes danger finds you when you least expect it. Some events slip into history without explanation, marked by confusion and sorrow. Lives disappear or end under circumstances that challenge every known fact. These strange happenings dodge reason, leaving behind questions with no clear answers. They exist in a space where truth remains distant and closure never comes. In the icy stillness of a Canadian winter, 2 young siblings, Lily just 6 and Jack Sullivan aged 4, vanished without leaving even a whisper behind. It was late January 2025 when the Sullivan family set up camp near Banff National Park, a location they'd visited many times before. With snow blanketing the trees and silence reigning over the vast wilderness, nothing seemed unusual until the quiet became too much. That morning, Lily and Jack went off to explore the area around their tent, their laughter briefly echoing through the pine trees. Their parents, believing the children to be playing nearby, continued with breakfast preparations. But as minutes turned into hours, worry crept in. No calls were answered, no footprints led anywhere useful. What started as a casual outing spiraled into a nightmare. Search teams arrived swiftly. Helicopters swept over the tree lines, search dogs combed every trail, and thermal imaging was used to scan the snowy terrain. Days passed, but not even a mitten, a shoe print, or a thread from their coats came to light. With no evidence of an animal attack, natural disaster, or human foul play, investigators were left in complete confusion. Whispers began to stir among the locals, talk of strange lights seen the night before the incident, flickering silently above the forest canopy. Some mentioned old stories, tales passed down for generations, of people who had simply ceased to exist in those mountains. Officials dismissed the talk, focusing instead on conventional explanations. But with nothing to hold on to, even experienced officers couldn't offer any real answers. The Sullivan case quickly became one of the most baffling files in Canadian history. Unlike other disappearances where some clue eventually surfaces, this one remained sealed in complete silence. Friends and family returned home without closure, clutching only fading memories and hope that never found resolution. Lily and Jack's names still appear in missing persons records, untouched by time, frozen in that moment of confusion and despair. What happened in that forest remains unknown. Were they lost in a hidden crevice of the land? Did something unseen intercept their path? To this day, their sudden vanishing continues to haunt all who hear of it. A mystery so complete, it feels as if the earth itself decided to keep them. January 2024, 30-year-old Nikki Chang McCain left her apartment in Sacramento, California, after texting her husband that she was headed out to pick up dinner. That message was the last known communication from her. Hours turned into days, and no one heard from her again. Her phone stopped pinging, her social media went silent, and her loved ones were left scrambling for answers in a fog of uncertainty. Nikki had a routine life. She was a mother, a wife, and worked a steady job. There were no signs that she intended to disappear. The area she vanished from wasn't known for high crime, and she wasn't involved in anything suspicious. That's what made her sudden absence so haunting. No warning signs, no clear reason. The police initially treated the situation as a possible voluntary departure, but her family strongly disputed that theory. They insisted she would never walk away from her children or leave without notice. Her car was eventually located several days later, abandoned in a parking lot. Inside, there were no obvious signs of a struggle, but the eeriness of the discovery raised more concerns than it answered. Surveillance footage in the area provided no significant leads. The timeline between her final message and the discovery of her vehicle left a critical gap in understanding what could have happened during that window. Investigators combed through her digital footprint, reaching out to friends, colleagues, and anyone who might have had contact with her in those crucial hours. But the more they searched, the less they found. There were no demands, no ransom, no clue pointing to a larger scheme. Nikki had simply gone out to get food and disappeared into thin air. Months later, her family continues to fight for attention on her case. Posters, social media posts, and community searches have all become a part of their daily life. Despite the silence from official leads, her loved ones refuse to let her name fade into the background. The disappearance of Nikki Chang McCain remains unsolved, a haunting entry in the growing list of people who left for something simple and never returned. What happened after that last text still lingers like an unanswered question in the hearts of those who knew her. On a cold February night in 2024, Charlene Hobbs vanished somewhere between a seaside cafe and her home in East Sussex. At 34, she was known for her quiet routine, an early years educator who led a peaceful life. That evening, she met a friend over coffee, chatted for nearly an hour, then headed toward the small car park just off the main street. CCTV footage showed her unlocking her vehicle, getting in and starting the engine. What happened after remains unknown. When she failed to show up for school the next morning, concerns spread quickly. Her phone was unreachable and messages remained undelivered. By afternoon, police were contacted, and within hours, a search operation began. Authorities followed digital traces, reviewed security videos, and spoke to locals. The last confirmed location? That tiny car park, just steps away from the coast. Her vehicle never appeared on any exit route. No toll camera, no street lens, no fuel station picked her up. It was as if both woman and car were wiped off the grid in seconds. Divers explored the nearby sea, nothing surfaced. Helicopters scanned cliffs, trails, and remote roads. The effort was massive, but it led nowhere. Charlene didn't leave behind a note, withdraw large amounts of cash, or show signs of distress in her personal life. Her phone, bank activity, and digital communications all stopped the same night. Friends described her as content. Her workplace confirmed no recent issues, and there were no legal or health-related complications in her records. Everything pointed toward normalcy, until it didn't. Speculation filled the silence. Some wondered if she had been followed, perhaps abducted by someone familiar with the area. Others spoke in hushed tones of strange disappearances near the coastline over the years, tales never officially acknowledged, but never entirely forgotten either. Months later, no new evidence emerged. The file remained open, gathering dust and occasional questions from investigators who had run out of angles. Her flat stayed untouched, her belongings frozen in time, as if waiting for someone to return. Charlene's disappearance remains one of the most unsettling mysteries in recent British memory. A single drive that never ended, a life paused mid-sentence, and a trail that leads into nothing but fog. In late 2024, the quiet streets of an Australian suburb were shaken by a discovery that stunned the entire nation. 19-year-old Isla Bell, a vibrant young woman known for her bright personality, suddenly vanished without a trace. Friends and family began searching desperately, holding on to the hope that she would return home safe. Days passed, then weeks, and with each moment, concern grew heavier. Authorities launched an extensive search, combing through neighborhoods, interviewing acquaintances, and following every lead they could gather. Yet, every effort seemed to meet a dead end. It wasn't until her body was found hidden inside a household appliance that the reality of her fate became heartbreakingly clear. The location of the discovery raised countless questions. How did she end up there? Who placed her in such a concealed and disturbing spot? Investigators examined every inch of the scene, searching for fingerprints, traces of DNA, or anything that could point to the perpetrator. But even with forensic teams working tirelessly, no clear suspect emerged. Speculation quickly spread among locals. Some believed it could have been someone close to her, while others suspected a stranger with a darker motive. Social media platforms filled with theories, amateur sleuths debating possible timelines and connections. Despite the growing public interest, law enforcement remained tight-lipped, only confirming that the case was being treated as a deliberate act. What made the situation even more baffling was the lack of apparent struggle or forced entry in the area where she was last seen. There were no witnesses stepping forward with conclusive information, and surveillance footage offered more confusion than clarity. It was as if the truth had been carefully buried along with her. Some reports hinted that in the days before her disappearance, Isla seemed unusually withdrawn and had confided vague concerns to a close friend. Whether these concerns were linked to the events that followed is unknown, but it has left investigators wondering if she sensed the danger approaching. This possible clue, though thin, has kept certain leads alive in the ongoing investigation. Months later, the investigation is still active. Detectives continue to retrace her last known movements, hoping fresh eyes or new evidence might surface. The family waits for answers, unable to move forward without knowing who was responsible and why. Cases like Isla's linger in the public mind because they strip away the illusion of safety. They remind us that sometimes, even in familiar places, darkness can be hiding in plain sight. Until someone steps forward or evidence finally cracks the mystery, her story will remain one of Australia's most unsettling and unresolved chapters.